The Americas, a rich, vibrant region, vital to our interests and close to our borders. They are our allies, our major trading partners, our closest neighbors. Their choices will change our lives. Three nations, 500 million people. And all of them as much Americans as we are.
Major funding for Americas was provided by the Annenberg CPB project. Additional funding provided by Carnegie Corporation of New York, the John D. and Catherine T. MacArthur Foundation, the Rockefeller Foundation, the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, and viewers like you.
De niña tenía mucha fantasía.
When I was a child, I had a lot of fantasies, some hidden and some revealed. The ones I talked about were to be a missionary in Africa. I wanted to be many things. I wanted to be a politician, to be president of the Republic. I have a note I wrote to my mother, asking her to forgive me for misbehaving. I signed it, your daughter, Maria Antonieta, future president of Chile, and a future diplomatic, philosophical, psychological, literary, and courageous talent. They were not few, my aspirations.
When Maria Antonieta Sá was born, women in Chile didn't even have the right to vote. Now she is mayor of Conchalí, a city near the capital, Santiago. Her story reflects a new force in the region. As women in the Americas have shaped new lives with their own hands, they have changed their families, their communities, and their countries. Throughout Latin America, tradition teaches women that marriage is their dream and home and children their natural domain. The Virgin Mary is the symbol of selfless motherhood. Although many women never marry, caring for the family is still the center of their lives. Doris Meniconi devoted her life to her children.
I was 20 when I got married. We had 13 children. It was a bustling household. Here I would have the tub. I would bathe one, give him the bottle, and put him to bed. Take the next, bathe him, give him the bottle, and so on. There was no distinction between boys and girls. They were all good kids, very healthy in spirit. So it was a bath twice a week in series.
I have seen these kids grow up in the mud, dripping noses, bare bottoms and all. I really enjoy working with them.
Ube Torres grew up in great poverty. For poor women, tradition is tempered by need.
We only had plastic shoes and the clothes that my mother made for us. I never wore leather shoes or used a brassiere, even when I got older. When I started dating, just before we got married, he bought me my first pair of shoes and my first bra. I will always remember those moments.
Ube Torres married at 17, hoping to escape the harsh conditions in which she lived. It was the late 1960s, a time when political ferment shook much of the world. In Chile, poor people mobilized for dramatic changes in their lives. In 1970, left-wing parties and labor unions formed a coalition called Popular Unity. They backed the socialist Salvador Allende for president. Allende promised radical social and economic reforms.
El esfuerzo de ellos estará destinado a hacer posible que cambie la vida del niño, la mujer y el hombre de la tierra chilena.
Allende won, but by a narrow margin. Parliament remained firmly in the control of conservative opposition parties. The wealthy still felt threatened. Allende's supporters were elated.
Cuando Allende salió presidente, había la sensación de que se había conseguido un sueño y que íbamos a construir.
When Allende became president, we felt we had realized a dream. We were going to build an absolutely new and just society where there would be the new man. No one spoke of the new woman.
Yo creo que florecieron los sueños.
Dreams were flourishing, and everybody dreamed.
Todo el mundo soñó.
President Allende's call for a Chilean road to socialism inspired workers and poor people to take over factories and farms. Ube Torres left a squatters' settlement to help build a new neighborhood on reclaimed land.
This was all a field of wheat. It was harvested by all of us and sold to buy things for the neighborhood. When we came here, there was no water, no electricity, nothing. Selling the wheat helped us to get what we needed.
The Popular Unity government pursued radical reforms, but they still saw women in terms of their traditional roles. Women were recruited for education and healthcare campaigns, which seemed closest to family work.
En el periodo de la Unidad Popular yo trabajaba como médica.
At the time, I worked as a doctor in the north of Chile.
Nuestra participación como mujeres en ese tiempo fue muy extensa.
Our participation as women was very extensive, and those of us who were political activists thought that we would rapidly achieve women's full liberation by building socialism.
Al construir el socialismo. Hoy mirando hacia atrás,
Looking back, I see that we were quite naive. Evaluating our real participation, only a small minority of women were treated as the equals of men. Most did menial tasks, which were like doing domestic duties within the parties.
Fui delegada nacional a la Central Única de Trabajadores, que era
I was a national delegate to the Workers' Central Union. I had to attend the plenary session with all the top leaders of the different unions. I was the only woman there. I was young, and miniskirts were in fashion then. When I arrived, everyone was disconcerted. I sat down in the first row, and then I had to move back because the mini was a bit, well, they got a bit distracted. At first they were surprised, then they tried to be indifferent. But when I talked, they really didn't pay proper attention.
As the government nationalized mines, industries, and banks, Allende's economic policies polarized the nation. Strikes and street demonstrations became daily events. Men and women from all walks of life were drawn into the conflict. Doris Meniconi's children strongly supported the president.
Mira, yo estaba cosiendo ahí adentro y veo en la tele.
I was sewing when I saw my son Miguel on television giving a speech from the window at the school where he was studying. I was scared, and I wanted to know why my son was speaking like that. My oldest, who was with me, said, "Calm down, Mom. You'll find out what he's doing." When Miguel got home, I asked him, "What were you doing?" And he said, "I am demanding modern materials for the schools because everything is old." And from then on, I was on edge because it was scary and I didn't understand much.
Right-wing forces, secretly supported by the United States, stepped up their destabilization campaign. They sabotaged the economy by blocking transportation and encouraging shopkeepers to hoard consumer goods. Many women blamed the long lines and severe shortages on Allende. The right wing played on the discontent of upper and middle-class women, urging them to speak out.
I
had a baby girl at that time, and I couldn't knit clothes for her because there was no wool in the market. I had to unravel old clothes in order to knit new ones. Friends had to bring me diapers from here and there. I even had to bring alcohol and cotton to the hospital.
Anti-government protests began early on, starting with the marches of the pots, which were done only by women. After that, the opposition began to grow. There were constant protests, and as a student, I took part in them.
The marches of the pots had a profound effect. The image of well-to-do women protesting in the streets was new and startling and helped strengthen the conservative opposition.
Las mujeres salimos todas a la calle, pedimos.
We women went out into the streets to demand an end to the Marxist government. We wanted freedom for our children. We asked all the armed forces, through letters, with marches, with whatever means.
Our women have played an important role in the life of the country and have changed the direction of society. However, our participation has been like that of a Greek chorus, which appears and disappears. At times of profound crisis, when the country faces dramatic situations, women appear and act with great strength and conviction. They are motivated by fundamental concerns, like the protection of life, security, the need to provide their family with food and a good future. This moves all women, young, old, everyone.
Chile was sliding towards chaos. The economy was in ruins. Left and right-wing demonstrators faced off each day. Both sides lived in fear.
El año 72, el hijo mayor tuvo la...
In 1972, my oldest son had a great idea. He said, "Let's have Christmas here with all my brothers and sisters." And when we had the table set, he said, "Make sure you remember this Christmas." I was taken by that. He said, "This may be the last Christmas that we all share together. Never forget this table where we're all gathered." There was a bit of tension, but then he started joking and it passed. And that was really the last Christmas, because Christmas of 1973 was very different.
On September 11th, 1973, a military coup d'etat overthrew the Popular Unity government.
Colocado en un tránsito histórico, pagaré con mi vida la lealtad del pueblo. La historia es nuestra y la hacen los pueblos.
Salvador Allende died in the presidential palace. The coup shattered Chile's long tradition of democracy. The commander-in-chief of the armed forces, General Augusto Pinochet, took power as head of a military junta.
Las Fuerzas Armadas y de Orden han actuado en el día de hoy solo bajo la inspiración patriótica de sacar al país del caos que en forma aguda lo estaba precipitando el gobierno marxista de Salvador Allende.
When
the military intervention came, that night I cried. Something important in which I had always believed, the democracy of which we Chileans felt tremendously proud, was broken. Still, that was what I wanted. That was what we had struggled for all this time.
I felt that the roof was opening up and that once again I was free. That's what I felt, plus an enormous gratitude towards those who had done it.
Immediately after the coup, the military seized thousands of Allende supporters. Union activists, community organizers, university professors, and anyone suspected of leftist leanings. Many were killed, many fled, and many were disappeared.
El golpe significaba que había que luchar por la vida, que había que...
The coup meant we had to struggle for life, to go on living and organizing. That day you felt the sadness, while you drove around, picking up people, looking for places where they could hide. When you look back, you see that you swallowed the pain, because you didn't even have time to cry. But I think the sorrows still lie very deep within us.
Muy dentro de nosotras.
Doris Meniconi's house was raided 4 days after the coup. Her children and her husband went into hiding.
Yo me acompaño con las plantas.
I keep myself company with my plants because here my family was torn apart. Right here, this is the top of a drainage hole. The neighbors reported that my children were hiding weapons. The military came straight here. They found only some old tools, pieces of construction materials, tubing, and so on.
Doris's son Miguel was detained in November 1974. He has never been seen again. 2 months later, his wife Lupita gave birth to twins.
There is a reality I want to put here. My broken home, and this tree for my son who has disappeared, in memory of the last Christmas I spent with my children. You think you're strong, but you have a heart that doesn't just pump blood. When they came here, Lupita saw the photo, and I also had this placard, which I carry in my struggle to know the truth. It says, "Where are they?" She told my grandchildren, "That is your father, the love of my life." They took it, they caressed it, and they asked, "Where did my father sit? Where did he sleep?" They went over and saw the bear, which I made from a jacket that Miguel always wore when he was working in the countryside. And the three of them took it and hugged it. And Lupita smelled it, and she said, "It smells like my Miguel." And for me, that was terrible, but it also gave me strength, because I didn't get rid of his jacket. And for them, it's like having their father. The children slept with it, the boy one night and the girl the next. In their sleep, they were still hugging the bear. I will always have him with me, because there's a bit of him in everything that you see here. I live with the memories.
Me tomaron presa en una casa de un barrio de un sector medio de Santiago.
I was taken prisoner in a house in a middle-class neighborhood of Santiago and was taken with another activist to the Via Grimaldi. Naked, helpless, I was subjected to tortures like the grill. It was a metal bed. They would apply electric shocks to the most sensitive parts of your body. They would run an electric prod all over you. Your mouth was gagged so that your screams couldn't be heard, and they played deafening music to drown out the screams. I'll never forget that for several days I was tortured to the music of the Concierto de Aranjuez. Afterwards, it was hard for me to listen to that music, but I set my mind to overcome it and to work it out with others.
Villa Grimaldi was a secret detention center. Thousands of people were imprisoned by the military in places like this. Here, Marisa Matamala shared a cell with Nubia Becker. who is returning to the now abandoned site for the first time.
No, pero este era el lugar, los trajeron donde nos pasaban a hacer las huellas y todo lo demás. Ahora aquí vive el guardia. Ya, entonces las pecerías, cosas estaban allá. Se me agolpan los recuerdos en este momento.
All my memories come flooding back. It's strange to be in a place where life goes on so normally, when this place was once so frightful. Villa Grimaldi was a terrible place, a place that really meant horror. Day and night, you could hear the screams of the tortured, which is a very unique cry. One of the things that violated women most was the brutality of the violence against them. They looked for the breasts to hit you, or the vagina to put an electrode. They looked for the most sensitive and prurient parts of your body to torture you. It was done specifically to torment you.
There is always a power relationship that becomes violent between a woman and her torturer. All the time they are trying to impose that power and obliterate you.
With them, machismo was really extreme, with no constraints whatsoever. We were punished because we had misbehaved, gone beyond the proper boundaries, and it was our fault that we were here.
They rejected women's involvement in politics because they believed women should be at home. Women should only look after the family. And to them it was very offensive, a break with tradition, for women to be involved in other things.
For them it was routine. Afterwards they could continue eating or talking about soccer, about the music they were playing. They'd keep up the most absurd conversation while they were hurting a defenseless human being.
It's so strange to be here now, knowing that all this we are seeing was also taking place at that time. We could hear church bells, but we couldn't imagine that all of this was happening as we are seeing it now. We heard the noises, but it was very difficult to imagine the reality.
You felt completely isolated from the world. Once you went through these gates, you had no idea of what was going to happen. You might never come out. You didn't know.
During the 1970s, many countries in Latin America were under military rule. To consolidate his power, General Pinochet suspended the constitution and closed Congress. Political activities and strikes were banned. The military took over all public institutions. First Lady Lucia de Pinochet took charge of the government programs for women. These programs were used to build support for the military and to reinforce women's traditional roles. For many poor women, these programs were the only source of training and benefits, since the government had greatly reduced social services. Conservative women were encouraged to volunteer their help as a patriotic duty.
Más activas que nunca de aquí en adelante. Las mujeres de la comunidad recibían la labor nuestra.
Women in the community received our help in the spirit of friendship. We approached them as friends. We had a program called Maximizing Resources. We taught them how to reuse all the little things one throws away at home. And they received our help with enthusiasm. They became our friends, and that was the nicest thing. We had 1 million friends.
With political parties outlawed and the labor movement crippled, economic policies favored the rich. Alicia Romo was one of the few women appointed to high office under General Pinochet. She became National Director of Industry and Commerce in 1974.
For Chile to be where it is today, to truly develop economically, it was necessary to implement a series of changes. We had to reduce the size of the state and make people understand that they were responsible for managing their own finances, not the state through fixed prices. We had to break many myths held by Chileans. To do this, we needed a long time, and power had to be concentrated in a strong hand who could make changes without debate. That was the fundamental legacy of the military government.
The government privatized state enterprises and promoted new exports like fruit. In Chile's central valleys, small farms gave way to export crops. This change had a profound impact on women's traditional ways of life.
Póngale, compadre Toño. Agua carita esmeralda, allá vaya va, allá vaya va, allá vaya va. Combatirón en Iquique, allá vaya va, allá vaya va, allá vaya va. Combatirón en Iquique, Quillola, Quillola.
Before, the town was poorer because there was less work. There were very few jobs, just work for men. Now with the grapes, there's more work, especially for women. Almost all the women work in agriculture, in the fields, and later in packing plants.
Josefina Chandia lives in the village of Andacoyito, 300 miles north of Santiago. She is one of thousands of women who can only find work during the fruit growing season. The women work long hours in the fields with no access to drinking water or bathroom facilities. They trim the grapes carefully so they will grow to a perfect shape for consumers in the United States, Europe, and Japan.
Nos van a pagar a 1.200 el día y sale a 36.000 pesos mensual, semana corrida. Eso es lo que lo estamos... ¿Y la libreta? Y con libreta. ¿Y el descuento?
Ah, que cuando uno llega con platos son más cariñosos. Bueno, el mío así, pues no sé. ¿Te interesaba? El mío no, pues no es cariñoso. Sí, no. Me pega, me deja un ojo así. Teníamos que estar todo el día en el caballete, en ese caballete grande que está ahí. Parecimos pollo arriba de ese caballete. Agarra de las mangas.
During the harvest season, women work in the packing plants. They get 4 cents for each box they clean and pack.
Se trabaja más o menos 15 horas diarias de pie. Entonces, en el packing se
You
trabaja...
work at least 15 hours a day on your feet. You go in at 1 in the afternoon, and you come out at 5:30 or 6 the next morning.
Mañana a 6 de la mañana. Esa es la hora de término del packing. Bueno, yo en el tiempo que trabajo en el packing dejo mis 2 niñas donde mi suegra.
When I'm working in packing, I have to leave my 2 girls with my mother-in-law. I drop them off on Sunday nights. They have to be there all week.
Están toda la semana allá porque no pueden estar conmigo porque yo salgo en la madrugada, así que
They can't stay with me because I get out of work at dawn, so I only see them on Sunday during the day. December, January, and February. Those are the months of packing.
son los meses de packing.
Pinochet's free market policies affected life in the cities too. Cheaper imports flooded the market. Factories closed and unemployment soared, reaching 30%. The military saw these as the inevitable social costs of fixing the economy. In poor neighborhoods, people went hungry. Women like Uve Torres organized communal kitchens, pooling their few pennies and soliciting donations of food and firewood. Every day, she and her neighbors cook for 200 people. For many families, this is their only meal of the day.
For me, it was really difficult to join the kitchen, even though I'm one of the founders, because neighbors make so many remarks. Oh, look who's going to the communal kitchen, and so on. You're ashamed. It hurts your dignity to think me in a communal kitchen. Why, if my husband has two good hands and can work, why should I be in this kitchen? So for me, it was really terrible to have to join. And not just for me, but for my friends as well. We had a member who didn't have food for her children for a whole week. She wanted to kill herself and the children out of despair. I heard about it and brought her to join the kitchen.
I joined the kitchen because my husband and my father were out of work, and at home we had no food. My neighbors suggested I join them, and I've been coming here 4 years now. It breaks the routine of being home alone. Here there's a different atmosphere. It's so lively.
We feel really proud because we're feeding our children. Of course, it's a great effort. Sometimes it's raining, you still have to cook, you get all muddy. It's really hard to bring the wood in because the entrance is so narrow. But it helps us out in so many ways.
Everything you see here, we did by ourselves, all of us. The shed, everything that you see is the result of our efforts.
Desperation over hunger led Uve Torres and her neighbors to band together. Desperation over the fate of loved ones led women whose relatives had been disappeared to join together too. Their status as mothers gave their protests moral authority and made it hard for the government to suppress them. Under the auspices of the Catholic Church, the women sewed their stories into tapestries or arpilleras and smuggled them abroad to publicize the human rights violations of the military regime. Doris Meniconi became a part of the group soon after her son was taken.
The cops told us that the biggest mistake the military made when they took our relatives was that they left us alive. They should have killed us along with them. That is what the police told us one time.
Nos fuimos conociendo con otras compañeras, buscando a nuestros seres queridos, pero como presos.
We met each other when we were looking for our loved ones, thinking they were prisoners, or in the worst case, dead, but not this tragedy of the disappeared.
Y ahí en el año 75 nos enseñaron a hacer este trabajo.
In 1975, we were taught to do this work. We learned that this served us as therapy, as a source of income, and to spread the word.
This is the work that Anna mentioned. This is the first piece done showing the drama that we lived. In the first picture, the telephone is very big because the mother gets the news over the phone that her son has been detained.
We women, the mothers and relatives of the disappeared, were the first to go out into the streets, carrying placards and demanding truth and justice for our loved ones. Then the repression would start. They would spray us with water cannons, drag us, detain us, and interrogate us at the police stations.
Here we chained ourselves in front of Congress.
During a chaining, during our hunger strike, we were always tense. When we went to chain ourselves, we were sure we would go to jail. We were in a dictatorship, but we did it. Everyone's legs were shaking, but we were searching for truth. We will always demand truth and justice. No more, no less.
Justicia y libertad.
1983 marked the 10th anniversary of the military coup. Chile was in its worst economic crisis since the Depression. For the first time since the coup, people began to openly defy the military. Protesters took to the streets demanding bread, jobs, justice, and liberty. Chilean women, influenced by those in exile and by the international women's movement, linked the call for democracy with the struggle for women's equality.
I'd been working semi-clandestinely since 1973, writing for a newspaper, and suddenly I began to think of myself. What's happening to me as a woman? What is my role? We began to meet with other women and to look for the roots of our history. We made a strong connection with Olga Poblete and Elena Cafarena, who had been the leaders of the suffragist movement of Chilean women.
In the 1930s and 40s, women from all classes fought together for the right to vote. They finally won in 1949. Now, the old leaders joined the younger women in calling for democracy in the country and the home.
Elena and I were the matriarchs, the oldest ones in these groups. The culmination of these women's movements was a meeting of 11,000 women. The Caupolicán Theater was filled to capacity, and no men were admitted.
The women who gathered that night crossed class and political lines. Their unity set an example for the fragmented opposition to Pinochet. A group called Women for Life channeled this unity into street actions. Their slogan was, "Somos más." There are more of us.
This is the 1985 march when the police attacked us. When they got near us, before they hit us with water cannons, a spontaneous sign appeared, which was to say, "We have clean hands." From then on, in all our actions, whenever the police came close, we said, "Clean hands." It was a contrast. You repress us, we are clean.
Despite the repression, women were on the front lines of the protests. In 1988, people pinned their hopes for change on a plebiscite to be held according to the constitution drafted by the military. A yes or C vote would authorize another 8 years of military rule. A no vote would allow free presidential elections. Both sides targeted women in their media campaigns. The C campaign stressed Chile's improving economy and tried to revive women's fears of the turmoil of the Allende years.
Yo quiero que mi país nunca vuelva a haber violencia extremista, desabastecimiento, inflación, mortalidad infantil, analfabetismo, falta de viviendas, falta de esperanzas, de dignidad femenina, de paz, de futuro. Nunca más pobreza, desamparo, hambre, cesantía, incertidumbre.
Hay una sola manera de responderle a lo que todos queremos para Chile.
Sí, 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 sí.
The No coalition of center and left-wing parties promised an end to repression with the return of democracy. Their TV campaign dared to feature women making fun of Pinochet.
No me gusta, no, no lo quiero, no, no. Me hace mal verlo todos los días, me molesta su sonrisa fría.
Me incomoda su literatura, me deprime su minicultura. No, no, no.
No me gusta, no, no lo quiero, no. No me gusta, no, no lo quiero, no, no.
Women were active on both sides of the campaign.
Up to the very day of the plebiscite, we didn't believe it was possible to vote out the dictatorship with a pencil. That with a pencil, saying no, we could defeat such a brutal dictatorship that had mistreated us so badly.
In October 1988, Chileans went to the polls, with women still voting separately from men according to law. 51% of women and 58% of men voted against military rule. The no won. General Pinochet was forced to hold presidential elections. In 1990, for the first time in 20 years, an elected president, Patricio Aylwin, took office. Despite the role women played in his success, no women were appointed to the new cabinet.
The political representation of women in Chile has always been poor. It was very bad in the military government, and it's worse today. In the ministries, we don't have a single woman. The positions women do have are of no political importance. No women's voices are heard at the table of our great national discussions.
That year, President Aylwin appointed 15 mayors. Maria Antonieta Sá was the only woman.
I never had so much power to make decisions as now. I'd always been part of a group. I had never been in public office. I had never had a secretary. And now I have power. Sometimes I sing that song that says, "My word is law." It's a wonderful thing to be able to make things happen, to make decisions that have concrete results. For example, I can decide whether to improve one neighborhood or another.
O mejorar una población en determinado barrio o en otro.
¿Y cuántas mujeres son de cada cuadrilla?
Son 40 mujeres que trabajan 10 en cada grupo.
Ya.
10 mujeres en cada grupo.
¿Y cuántas casas están haciendo?
40 casas.
40 casas.
40 casas. En obra gruesa. Aquí hay un grupo de mujeres que está trabajando, está terminando una mocheta. Mocheta se llama este pedacito.
Hola, ¿qué tal? ¿Cómo están?
Hola. Buenas tardes.
¡Qué gusto! ¡Mira qué tal! Hola, la señora alcaldesa Cortila. Hola, ¿cómo están?
Es una de las mejores albañileras que tenemos en el proyecto.
Oiga.
Ella aprendió rápidamente y ha pegado harto ladrillo, tiene harta experiencia.
Cuando termine la contratamos ahí en la municipalidad para que siga haciendo casas.
Aquí y yo acarreo ripio.
Las chiquillas me dicen la capatá.
¿La capatá? ¿Por qué? ¿Porque es muy mandona o no?
Y por ahí a veces las mando.
Ella está haciendo su casa ahora, está pegando la vida en su casa.
De casa.
Ya. ¿Y cuántos viven en su casa? ¿Cuánta gente?
Vivimos 6.
¿6? ¿Qué dicen de ustedes acá trabajando?
Ya están calladitas. Que miran por detrás, pero delante de una no dicen nada.
Ahora ya están creando músculo, dudo mucho que puedan abrir la boca.
O sea, usted está creando músculo ahí.
¿Qué tomas la medida tú del...?
Con este porque no tengo de la otra, mira, con esta. Como yo también hago costura, con esta me...
Oiga, es como para los vestidos y para las paredes la misma cinta.
Teniendo el metro,
Exacto, igual.
o decir la hacemos aquí.
Me llegan muchas cartas. Usted, como es mujer,
I get a lot of letters. You, as a woman, can understand this situation. It's true, most of the problems in the community are family problems, like housing, health, education. We women have been queens in the kingdom of necessity, queens without power.
La gente se da cuenta que a lo mejor por ser mujer
People think that because I'm a woman, I can be more sensitive to their problems and can make a commitment. We've established a channel of affection, a closeness with people, which is very nice and is very rewarding personally.
Muy linda con la gente que a mí me enriquece mucho personalmente.
Maria Antonieta Sá is the first woman to have the mayor's honor of leading the Independence Day celebrations in Conchalí. Breaking new ground has always been her aspiration.
Ahí, por este ladito, ya. Ya, vamos. Salud. Salud, salud. 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 Y a poquito nomás.
Over the last 30 years, the spiritual landscape of the Americas has changed radically. And now, for many, miracles are not enough. Next time on Americans.
Next week, Americas will return to its regular time of 9 o'clock. Thank you for watching Public TV from Spokane. Now get ready for Survivors coming up next.
The Americas, a rich, vibrant region, vital to our interests and close to our borders. They are our allies, our major trading partners, our closest neighbors. Their choices will change our lives. Three nations, 500 million people. And all of them as much Americans as we are.
Major funding for Americas was provided by the Annenberg CPB project. Additional funding provided by Carnegie Corporation of New York, the John D. and Catherine T. MacArthur Foundation, the Rockefeller Foundation, the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, and viewers like you.
In Latin America, religion has a powerful presence. Here, people openly profess their faith. This region is home to a rich variety of religions, but there are more Catholics here than anywhere else on earth. 120 million of them live in Brazil.
Hoje nós estamos
Today we are having a religious event for the public.
E a mensagem é uma mensagem pascal.
The Easter message of happiness and hope should encourage the people during this very difficult time in their lives.
Momento tão difícil que ele está vivendo.
Sobre toda a infidelidade.
In the last 30 years, the religious landscape in Latin America has shifted dramatically. New religions have challenged Catholicism. Old and new beliefs have mingled. And the Catholic Church itself has undergone remarkable changes. The people are now demanding more of their faith, more than just miracles. A generation of change began in 1965 after a 3-year meeting of the world's cardinals and bishops. Pope John XXIII had called them to Rome to modernize the Church for a world now confronting the Cold War, a nuclear arms race, atheism, and global poverty. What emerged was a stronger commitment to democracy, justice, and human rights.
O Vaticano II, a meu ver, foi tão importante.
I think Vatican II was important because, as Pope John XXIII said, it opened all the windows and doors so that fresh air could come into the church.
3 years later in Medellin, Colombia, Pope Paul VI urged the Latin American bishops to apply the conclusions of Vatican II to local conditions. They focused on the region's huge economic disparities and condemned poverty and its causes as sinful.
Na igreja em toda a América Latina, ela sempre trabalhou muito com os pobres.
Throughout Latin America, the Church always worked a lot with the poor.
Os bispos latino-americanos resolveram assumir.
But after 1968 in Medellin, the Latin American bishops decided on a more conscious approach to the difficulties of living in the region and made explicit a preferential option to work for the poor.
Do trabalho da igreja, o atendimento das pessoas mais pobres.
For poor people, this commitment to changing unjust societies would mean a church working more directly on their behalf.
No sentido de que o povo, de que Deus é Pai.
People must be taught that God loves us all, and therefore doesn't want someone owning thousands of acres of land, while others have none. God is our Father, and loves his children, and wants all of them to be happy.
Ama seu filho e quer a felicidade de todos.
Like much of Latin America, Abiaí in northeastern Brazil has seen decades of conflict over land. Families whose grandparents farmed here live with the constant threat of eviction by landowners. Friar Anastasio is a Franciscan monk working for the Pastoral da Terra, a religious organization which was among the first to defend landless peasants in their struggle for legal rights. He brings to the community the sacraments of the faith and the politics of organized resistance.
Eu acho que é isso que estamos fazendo, tentando, a partir da palavra de Deus.
We are trying to show the people that according to the gospel, they are human beings and entitled to have enough to live on.
Eu acho que eu tenho dado uma contribuição.
I think my contribution is in uniting them around the Word of God, around the Mass, and reflecting on the reality of their lives.
Em torno de uma reflexão da realidade em que eles vivem.
Eu estou achando assim que a gente, a ser filho da terra, a gente tem algum direito.
If we're natives to this land, we have some rights. I mean, why should they kick us out if we haven't done anything wrong? Both my father and my husband's father got married here and died here of old age.
Aqui morreu de velho.
Que nós deixar a terra e para fundo da rua, sabe qual é o dia?
If we leave this land and end up on the streets, you know what that means? We'll die of starvation.
Porque nós não tem condição.
We'll have to beg, and our children will starve or be forced to steal. Here on the land, we can fill our stomachs.
E a gente na terra não, a gente barriga cheia, né?
Vamos contar. Quem vai, levanta a mão. Daqui e de lá, de todos os dois lugares, de todos os dois lugares. Então, vamos ver, de todos os dois lugares. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24. São 10 famílias que vêm há 5 anos lutando para que a Fundap compre a terra.
Out of Medellin came support for the idea of using the gospel to raise consciousness and promote human rights. Today, Friar Anastasio is using an eviction crisis in nearby Bentaora to mobilize these farmers for a planned confrontation with the government land agency. Photographs of hired thugs and bulldozed houses in Bentaora are a reminder of what is at stake here too.
Se a igreja não ajudasse os agricultores, eu acredito que eles
If the church weren't helping, the farmers would be in a terrible situation because no other institution could assist them the way the church does.
Apoiados como a igreja apoia. Não fora a atuação da igreja.
Without church action, there would be thousands and thousands of landless workers multiplying the city's slums.
As favelas das grandes cidades.
This is at least the 15th time they've come to the state capital to plead their case. The Pastoral da Terra pays for their food and the long bus trip. They want the government land agency to safeguard their rights by purchasing their farms from the landowner.
O Dr. Felipe Lune, ele está vindo agora às 11 horas. Ele vem trazer a proposta dele, porque eu estou com o processo em mãos. Vocês acompanharam aí um problema que fugiu à instância superior do INCA. Mas aí o presidente da República lançou uma nova alternativa.
Despite a promising start, no agreement is reached. The farmers remain at the landowner's mercy and their fight goes into its 13th year.
Eu estou falando que nós, aí, sede velho, povoado, se é espera do governo, a polícia dele nos piados da gente, porque a polícia aí perto agora está tudo em despejo.
Então, na nossa realidade aqui, então é essa realidade dura, crua.
Reality is tough for these people. In this context, I must make my contribution to serve them and not the wealthy, as a monk, as a Franciscan, as a priest. Otherwise, I'll only be reinforcing the system that oppresses my people, and I'll be making them more and more miserable.
Because of what I've been through, I can hope things will be better in the future, even though they probably won't. If it weren't for the church, we'd really be lost. Then we'd have no one.
Que é que você quer que eu faça? Perguntou Jesus. Mestre, quero ver outra vez. Respondeu o cego. Então, na medida em que a gente não toma a defesa, então a gente não está, de fato, vendo uma luz da fé. E a leitura que João Guilhermino leu foi disso que falou. Foi disso. A fé.
The preferential option for the poor emerged from a long tradition of social concern. But how to implement it provoked political and theological debate. At the center of the argument was liberation theology, which accepted class struggle and socialism as necessary to end poverty and injustice.
Perdoai-nos as nossas ofensas, assim como nós perdoamos a quem nos tem ofendido. Não nos deixeis cair em tentação, mas livrai-nos do mal. Amém.
In 1964, when the military overturned Brazil's elected government, this debate within the church intensified. Initially, church leaders were sympathetic to the coup, but by the end of the decade, repression and serious human rights violations called for a different stand.
We had to take action because things were getting out of control. In 1969, we had an absolute dictatorship, which meant a totally closed society. So we realized that we either had to take action or disappear and surrender to an endless dictatorship.
The press was silenced, political parties weren't functioning, trade unions didn't exist. There were only a few isolated voices, so the church spoke out. That was when Bishop Helder Camara called the church the voice of those with no voice.
On every church door, we posted 10 points denouncing torture and asked the people to denounce it publicly too. Over 40 bishops prepared a peace testimonial which said it was not legal to arrest people without a judicial order, not legal to torture, not legal to kill, not legal to make people disappear.
The 1975 burial service for murdered Jewish journalist Vladimir Herzog, conducted by both Cardinal Arns and the chief rabbi of Sao Paulo, came to symbolize the Church's willingness to speak not just for silenced Catholics, but for all Brazilians. By then, the Conference of Brazilian Bishops was united behind some of the most progressive initiatives in the world.
For me, Vladimir Herzog was the beginning of the end of censorship and the beginning of the end of arbitrary imprisonment.
In 1979, in another Latin American country, the Church would go further. In Nicaragua, the Catholic bishops supported the people's right to take up arms against a government which violated human rights and resisted peaceful reform. They were saying armed struggle could be a legitimate means to resist dictatorship. It was a remarkable statement for the Catholic Church, especially the Latin American Church, which had traditionally been identified with governments and privileged society. Catholicism arrived with the conquistadores in the late 1400s. Over the centuries, it was a church that educated the elite, provided moral guidance to the middle class, and evangelized to convert the indigenous people and African slaves.
At first, there was some incompatibility, because we received the gospel through European culture. We black people were obligated not only to accept the Catholic faith, but to do so through a culture that wasn't ours. It was imposed, not assimilated.
Ficou uma superposição, mas não foi uma assimilação.
Many of the African religions that the slaves brought with them were based on communicating with unseen spirits. Today, Afro-Brazilian Spiritism remains a pervasive and influential force in the culture. This is the annual festival of Iemanjá, African spirit goddess of the sea.
Iemanjá is my mother. I am a daughter of Iemanjá. When we leave our mother's womb, we already have our orishas. And orisha is a dimension that no one gives us. It is part of the makeup of a human being.
My Beata is a priestess in Candomblé, one of the three major Afro-Brazilian religions. In her house of worship during a religious ceremony, followers present themselves to her according to the rank of the Orisha, or African spirit that is their personal guardian.
Eu fui batizada porque, muito embora
I was baptized Catholic, even though my mother had been initiated. I was confirmed and got married and all that. But if I had the vision then that I have today, I wouldn't have done any of it. I think we should all do as we feel. My own gods are enough to baptize me.
Deuses são suficientes para ter me batizado.
Candomblé was often practiced in secret. Forbidden to worship their own gods, slaves would disguise them as Catholic saints.
Então eles foram obrigados a se tornar cristãos.
They were obliged to become Christians, but even though they needed to express devotion their own way, they were not allowed to use their own culture.
E eles sentiam necessidade de expressar a religiosidade do jeito deles.
So what happened? They accepted the Catholic symbols, but also kept their own symbols, their orishas.
Guardavam seus símbolos, os seus orixás.
Quase sempre eles furavam
Usually, they made a hole in the image of a saint and put their own god inside. Saint Anthony would have a piece of iron inside to symbolize Ogum. Oshun was Our Lady of Light.
Esta Iemanjá, deusa.
This is Iemanjá, goddess of the sea. They say she is Our Lady of Immaculate Conception in Catholicism, but that's irrelevant.
Eu não sou católica. Fui à missa, como eu estou te dizendo.
I'm not a Catholic. I used to go to Mass, but now I don't feel the need. I already have my faith and my own church inside me. Here, inside, I have everything. Candomblé is my true church.
Mediums are possessed by the orishas. They dress and dance in the style which is associated with each spirit.
Orixás usa o nosso corpo.
Orishas use our body. You can be sitting there and receive energy from an orisha. Sometimes it's through touching. Or the drums, the chants you feel. He takes you through the chant.
Ele lhe toma através daquele cântico.
In Brazil, we have Catholics who consider themselves to be true Catholics, even though they go to Candomblé. They don't see any incompatibility.
Não vê incompatibilidade.
Ave Maria, cheia de graça, Senhor convosco, bendita entre as mulheres, e o filho vosso, Jesus.
Brazilians have not only reconciled Catholicism with Spiritism, but as recently as the 1920s, introduced a new Spiritist religion, Umbanda. Uniquely Brazilian, Umbanda incorporates aspects of Afro-Brazilian Spiritism with reverence for Catholic saints and elements of 19th century European Spiritism. Like Candomblé, Umbanda focuses on possession, but instead of only African orishas, their spirits include those of human beings who once lived in Brazil. Proud Indians, wise old black men, heroes from folk history. There may be as many as 100,000 Umbanda centers in Brazil. Shops everywhere cater to the needs of both Spiritists and Catholics. Calixto Gouveia manages a religious article store on the outskirts of Rio de Janeiro. He's a practicing Catholic and a devout believer in the power of Umbanda.
Ele está com a roupa, que é a roupa própria dele, a roupa dos ciganos. Ele incorpora nas pessoas para dar mensagens, para dizer à pessoa o que vai acontecer para frente, o que já passou, o porquê de determinadas coisas que vão acontecer, entende? Então isso vai muito da consideração de cada um, o que a pessoa sente por aquele espírito, a afinidade que a pessoa tem. Entende? Então isso depende muito. Eu fui educado na Igreja Católica.
I was brought up Catholic and warned against Spiritism.
Eu acho que é tudo espiritismo. Eu acho que são todas entidades que podem me ajudar, que podem me aconselhar.
I believe in everything spiritual, in beings who can help and advise me. There are spirits who've already been on this earth, who have the power of nature to see what I can't see.
Por força da natureza, eles têm outro conhecimento, eles enxergam. Eu acho que foi através do espiritismo que eu...
I think it was through Spiritism that I recovered my health. I had an illness that the doctor couldn't cure, but Spiritism did.
E o espiritismo me deu jeito.
Many come to Umbanda through crisis, and Calixto had his first consultation with an Umbanda priestess when faced with the amputation of an infected foot. Told that an evil spell had been placed on him, he was instructed to perform certain rituals to appease the spirits. It worked. 3 days later, he was cured. Now Calixto consults regularly. Today's problem has to do with his business.
Então eu estou reunindo documentos agora para...
E quando vai ser a próxima chamada em juízo?
A próxima chamada em juízo deve ser chamada daqui a 6 meses, mais ou menos.
Vamos dizer, o senhor vai fazer, eu vou lhe ensinar uma coisa, uma obrigação, o senhor vai fazer.
Sim, senhora.
E depois o senhor vai esperar a resposta. Conforme o senhor for sabendo do andamento, o senhor vai firmando o que eu vou lhe ensinar.
Sim, senhora.
Está bem assim?
Está bem, sim.
Então, o senhor guarda de cabeça?
Guardo, sim.
Simplesmente uma garrafa de vinho, tinto, 7 velas
brancas,
nada de cor.
Sim.
O senhor sabe que nós só usamos branco.
Sim.
Um charuto. O senhor vai num pé de árvore sem espinho.
Sim, senhora.
O senhor põe, mais ou menos, a árvore está aqui, o senhor põe assim. Em volta, sim, a garrafa no meio.
Garrafa no meio.
Abre a garrafa, abre.
Sim.
Despeja assim, bota a garrafa no meio e as velas em volta.
Então eu acendo as velas, boto em volta.
Em volta. 3 de um lado, 3 do outro e uma que é assim, deixando a abertura.
Deixando a abertura, sei.
Acende o charuto,
sim, senhora,
dá 3 tragadas, pedindo o que o senhor quer.
Sim, senhora.
E põe em cima da garrafa. Assim, certinho.
Então a garrafa está em pé, eu botei ele em cima.
Em cima. E o senhor faz o seu pedido.
Tá bom.
Depois, então, vamos esperar, conforme o senhor for recebendo as respostas.
Sim, senhor.
O senhor, se houver necessidade, faz outra vez.
Sim.
Mas nunca antes de 21 dias. Sempre depois.
Sempre depois.
Sempre depois. Porque é 7, 14, 21.
Sim, senhor.
Tá bem?
Tá bem.
É só isso. Aí a fé é que nos leva a tudo. Todas as pessoas vêm a este terreiro procurando uma caridade.
Everyone comes here for compassion, to get a little bit of love and faith and to get what they want. For problems at home, a bad business deal, that sort of thing.
Uma proteção para esses trabalhos assim. A verdadeira Umbanda,
True Umbanda uses love, goodwill, and respect for people. That's what solves things in Umbanda.
é isso que resolve na Umbanda.
Spiritist religions and Catholicism have coexisted here for close to 500 years. In the last half-century, Protestant churches have become another vital force in the region. Pentecostal congregations are expanding at an unprecedented rate. The Universal Church of the Kingdom of God is now reported to be the fastest-growing church in Brazil. Its founder, Bishop Edir Macedo, packs the faithful into stadiums by the hundreds of thousands.
Põe a mão no lugar da sua enfermidade aí agora e nós vamos fazer a oração e vamos ver se esse Deus funciona. Se depois da nossa oração ninguém se manifestar para dizer, ó, eu fui curado, então eu vou sair daqui, eu vou rasgar a Bíblia que eu encontrar no meio do caminho, nunca mais vou falar de Jesus, nunca mais eu vou falar nesse nome, jamais. Eu vou quebrar essa cruz aqui. Se nós orarmos aqui a Ele agora e não houver resposta agora, eu quero.
Pentecostals offer conversion through direct experience of the Holy Spirit. In return, they demand an exclusive commitment to their church. Bishop Macedo claims that more than 20 million Brazilians have made this choice.
Fecha os seus olhos, em nome do Senhor Jesus. Ou tua palavra é verdadeira, ou tua palavra é mentirosa. Eu agora, meu Pai, estou aqui para fazer um desafio perante todas essas milhares e milhares de pessoas. Se o Senhor existe, se o Senhor é verdadeiro, o Senhor vai ter que me responder aqui e agora. Mas se o Senhor é mentiroso...
A new Pentecostal church opens up in Brazil every week, frequently in the poorer parts of town or in rural areas where there isn't already a Catholic church.
Aqui nesse lugar, você tem uma oportunidade de receber algo de Deus esta tarde. Você tem a oportunidade de receber uma bênção. Mas a bênção é para quem deseja. A bênção é para quem deseja. Buscai e achareis.
Much street corner evangelizing has been targeted at new migrants to the city who find in the Pentecostal churches a supportive community. The Catholic Church has difficulty keeping up with this competition. Protestant ministers don't take vows of celibacy, and their training is shorter than preparation for the priesthood. They now outnumber Catholic priests.
Vamos falar com essa pessoa então? Alô? Ah, meu Deus, caiu a ligação. Então você liga de novo, minha filha, você que está sofrendo.
These new churches also take a modern approach to spreading the word.
233-91-628. 233-91-628. Eu fui católico muito tempo. Eu passei pelo espiritismo.
I was a Catholic for a very long time. Then I was a Spiritist. And for about 11 years, I've worked with the Universal Church of the Kingdom of God.
Igreja Universal do Reino de Deus, porque me identifiquei com a forma direta.
I came to the Universal Church for its simple and straightforward message about how to take care of my needs and problems.
ela veio direta em função da minha necessidade, da forma simples de exposição das coisas. Eu estava separado da minha família.
I was separated from my family. I was sure I didn't love my wife. I was a potential alcoholic, spent my money partying, in orgies. I didn't think I could stop drinking, that I could go back home. And then this happened. This is a miracle.
Isso é milagre.
Pastor Batista's story is typical. People come to the Universal Church in pain and distress, acutely aware of problems they don't know how to handle. His radio program is a combination of religious announcements, prayer, testimonials, and call-in advice. There is direct contact with the pastor and encouragement to confess weakness without embarrassment.
Rádio Copacabana, boa tarde. A senhora quer dar o testemunho? A senhora ouviu a pergunta? Sim, a vida da senhora mudou? E hoje a senhora está empregada. Qual igreja a senhora frequenta? Sim, quando o pastor fala alô, a senhora responde, tá, amor? Linha 10.
Ô, Márcio, diga-me uma coisa, qual era o teu fundo de poço, rapaz?
Meu fundo de poço, pastor, foi ingressar nas drogas, entendeu? Pelas amizades, e fui por um caminho ruim.
Márcio? Sim. Márcio? Sim. Quer dizer que você usou drogas?
Eu usava sim.
Usou cocaína?
Usei cocaína.
Por que você chegou a usar todo esse tipo de coisa? Buscar nesses estímulos externos uma fuga, né, para os seus problemas. O que havia com você? Você tem pai, mãe, tem uma família toda estruturada, direitinho?
Não.
Você não é obrigado a nada, né? Ou pelo destino?
Sonia da Silva and her family deserted Catholicism for Pastor Batista's church, attracted by the idea of a religion which promises quick solutions to personal problems. Sonia and her husband had also been Umbanda practitioners until she was hospitalized for manic depression, an illness she now blames on evil spirits.
A gente não deve ter medo de nada mesmo, não. Eu ia para a igreja católica, né?
I used to go to the Catholic Church, but not often. When problems came up, the Catholic Church wasn't helpful.
Eu era uma pessoa assim, depressiva, tinha muito medo. Então, através da Igreja Universal do Espírito Santo,
I was always frightened and very depressed. It was through the Universal Church of the Holy Spirit that I learned not to be afraid and to feel more secure. I started to believe in things coming from God. This brought me tranquility and a little bit of peace.
Foi milagre, sim.
It was a miracle because the doctor said that her disease was irreversible. She was supposed to live on medication forever.
Both Edgar and Sonia now spend 3 nights a week as volunteer lay workers at a Universal Church in Rio. Their new sense of self-worth comes from being part of a community whose main goal is personal improvement through following a strict moral code with rules about thrift, sobriety, modesty, and hard work.
Por todo o insucesso do ser humano. Muitas das vezes até pelo sucesso.
E na Igreja Universal, para mim, eu considero como uma dose mais forte, o meu calmante. É a hora que eu encontro paz.
The Universal Church is my best medicine, my sedative. Now I can find peace because I'm normal, just like other people. When I cry today, it's because I'm happy, thank God.
Ela chega desesperada, assim como eu cheguei, né? E fui conversar com o pastor.
People arrive desperate, like me when I first got here. I went to the pastor and said, if I can't solve my problems, I'm going to kill myself. Life has no meaning. I don't belong in this world. And that's exactly how people show up. And we're always there for them, wanting to help.
The Universal Church considers people's problems to be the work of the devil. It promises concrete results to believers who renounce the devil in favor of the Holy Spirit.
dessa mulher. A pomba gira está alojada no corpo dela. O espírito está alojado no corpo dessa moça. Saia agora!
Você está colocando a doença na coluna, a dor na coluna, sai daí agora. Você está colocando a dor no estômago, você está destruindo essa vida com uma última...
Twice a week, the church helps its members purge themselves of evil spirits through exorcism. The names of the demons being exorcised are often those of Afro-Brazilian spirits, identified as arch-rivals for the souls of Brazilians.
Quanta doença, quanta miséria que estiver na minha vida, agora, em nome de Jesus, em nome de Jesus.
A igreja pentecostal tem senso do maravilhoso. Tem milagre, tem exorcismo.
The Pentecostal church has a sense of the wonderful. It has miracles, exorcism, direct contact with the sacred. The Catholic Church traditionally is very rational, doctrinal, and dry, so people don't feel at home in it and go in search of other churches.
A igreja, ela tem uma preocupação muito grande na honestidade.
We are deeply concerned about honesty, about not giving people the assurance of an immediate solution. The message of the church is one of trust, faith, and of hope. It can't promise something that belongs to God.
Prometer aquilo que é de Deus.
The 1980s found much of Latin America returning to elected governments and the church facing different challenges. Pope John Paul II was intent on reducing the church's direct participation in politics, especially the involvement of priests. During his 1983 visit to Nicaragua, under the gaze of the world's television cameras, the Pope admonished Father Ernesto Cardenal, Minister of Culture in the revolutionary government.
Centroamericanos y nicaragüenses.
Later, at an outdoor mass, the Pope's speech was drowned out by cries for peace and revolutionary slogans. His fears were confirmed. The church was divided and too politicized.
A igreja tem medo de perder a unidade, de se cindir, de perder a sua missão.
The church fears a loss of unity. It fears losing its main mission, spreading the gospel. The church also fears a revolutionized society, a society in which it would have trouble finding itself.
In Brazil, the Pope was also uncomfortable with the radicalism of some sectors of the church. He began appointing conservatives to replace some of the more outspoken bishops on their retirement. In the Olinda Recife Archdiocese, Archbishop Helder Câmara retired in 1985 after a lifetime in the activist vanguard. His successor introduced more conservative policies. Several progressive priests were transferred to other assignments, and one, Father Reginaldo Veloso, was suspended.
In truth, the presence of Archbishop Helder was for all of us a sign, a direction, a road to follow. The road to God through the poor and oppressed.
This is Morro da Conceição, Hill of the Immaculate Conception, a working-class neighborhood of Recife, named for its famous shrine to the Virgin Mary. The community has a tradition of church-supported activism and embraces many of the innovations that emerge from Vatican II and Medellin.
I've been working here in Morro de Conceição for 13 years, and I feel at home. I believe I've identified with the people, with their daily life, their problems, their struggles, and their aspirations.
Every priest on his ordination day ought to commit to working in obedience and with reverence for the bishop. Reginaldo neither obeys nor reveres me. On the contrary, he incites the people. Father Reginaldo publicly headed a protest movement attacking church authorities, scandalizing the people. I tolerated all this for a long time, but to this day he has not shown the smallest sign of contrition. So, unfortunately, I had to remove him from the parish.
Então, eu tive que, infelizmente, chegar a adotar esta medida de removê-lo da paróquia.
When Archbishop Cardoso removed Father Reginaldo, many residents flatly rejected his replacement. 10 months of resistance culminated in October of 1990, when 2,000 people demonstrated in the streets of the city.
Our fight is not an individual one, it's the people's fight, and the decisions are made by all of us.
Father Reginaldo's supporters hid the keys to the church. They refused to relinquish them to the new priest, Father Constanti, and set up a blockade to prevent access to the church.
I have no option other than to resist along with the people. I'm responsible for all these communities. We're all people capable of understanding things who can take responsibility for our actions.
Nós tínhamos tido uma conversa com o arcebispo alguns dias antes.
We talked to the Archbishop, and he promised to solve our problem in the best possible way.
E a resposta veio dias depois.
Several days later, we were surprised by policemen who came with a court officer and broke into the church, violently sawing off the locks, pushing in the gate. Father Constanti showed us the church's keys and said they now belong to him.
Mostrando as chaves da igreja, dizendo que a chave da igreja pertencia a ele.
The community defied the law, and the law ordered the church open, and I went inside.
I don't know with what gall and nerve the priest who was named against the people's wishes and who has caused so much indignation will be able to remain here to celebrate Mass and do whatever he is supposed to do.
Seu desgraçado! Eles vão pagar caro o que estão fazendo com a gente, esse morro da gente! Pertence a gente!
Appalled by the use of military police, angry residents hurled rocks at Father Constanti's car. The installation of the new priest created two congregations within the parish, with Father Reginaldo's loyalists insisting that he remain among them. Denied access to the church building, they continue to hold their own services in the local schoolyard. This is a reflection of the disagreement among Catholics on many issues, including what kind of participation people should have in their church.
Então, uma igreja que permite que as mulheres participem, que ela tenha voz e vez
The church that allows women to participate and have a voice and an opportunity is a church open to human beings. Despite age or sex, we should all be considered children of God.
Small group meetings are a mainstay of the faith in this community, with women playing a leading role. Members gather regularly to discuss both spiritual and practical issues. Sister Lina, who lives here, leads discussions of women's rights considered in the light of the gospel. Their particular brand of consciousness raising has antagonized the new archbishop.
Para essa igreja que nós chamamos não progressista, é muito mais importante.
In the non-progressive church, it's much more important to have people under your control. When they don't understand their roles, it's easier to have them under your thumb. But when they discover their own value, they want to participate and collaborate.
Quer decidir, quer colaborar.
Across Latin America in the 60s and 70s, thousands of base Christian communities like this one were formed to provide a much more intimate experience of the church. Some concentrated on spirituality, others promoted political activism.
Quando Jesus passou aqui na Terra, ele não se preocupou apenas com a questão religiosa. Ele se preocupou e se preocupou muito com a questão social.
When Jesus was here on earth, he was preoccupied with social as well as religious affairs. When he gave his life to the poor, it was a political choice. That's why the church must be involved with politics, along with social and religious matters.
Com a questão social e com a questão religiosa também.
O povo quer ver na pessoa do padre.
The people want to see in their priest and in any other Christian the face of God, the face of Christ. But the Christ I believe in is the one in the parable of the Good Samaritan. The people want us committed to their pain, in solidarity with their suffering above all. This is the true face of God.
E essa é a face verdadeira de Deus.
As pessoas precisam ver no sacerdote.
People must see in their priest the face of Jesus Christ. For all their hunger for material needs, the people still have a hunger and thirst for God. When they look at a priest, they want to see themselves reflected in that priest, the authentic image of Jesus Christ.
No padre, no sacerdote, uma imagem autêntica de Jesus Cristo.
Instituiu o mistério da Páscoa. Lembrai-vos sempre da vossa misericórdia e santificai-nos pela vossa constante proteção. Por nosso Senhor Jesus Cristo, na unidade do Espírito Santo. Amém. Guarda a espada na bainha. Por acaso, eu não vou beber o cálice que meu pai me deu?
The arrival of Father Constanti was welcomed by many parishioners. They hoped he would restore a more even balance between spiritual and social priorities.
A igreja também tem a sua finalidade espiritual. Ela não pode sair muito desse caminho, porque o povo...
The church also has a spiritual goal, and it shouldn't stray too far from this path. People look to the church for spiritual peace in their minds and in their souls. We go to the church to pray, to pour out our hearts to God.
A gente procura a igreja para rezar, para desabafar com Deus.
Jamais te deixei sem defesa. Fui eu que te fiz infeliz. E esqueces de a minha presteza. Deus só
Padre Constante, ele celebra, ele é padre mais cristão.
Father Constanti is more of a Christian priest. He preaches more about God's Word. So when you arrive at Mass full of problems, he's not going to fill your head with all the other problems that exist in Brazil.
The church should be a place to pray, not to talk about subjects which have nothing to do with the church.
The
church must keep up with modern social developments with what's going on, or it will lag behind and become shut off. We are influenced by both progressive and traditional forces. You can't kill one part of the church if the other is to survive. In the future, they must come together.
Cristo, ontem e hoje. Princípio e fim. A ele pertence o tempo, Alfa e Ômega.
A generation after Vatican II, Latin American Catholics are still struggling over competing visions of their church in the modern world.
Amém. Amém.
Brazil, the country with the greatest number of Catholics and a major source of innovation and reform, will continue to exert a powerful influence on the world church.
Viva Cristo! Jesus Cristo vivo na
While rival churches compete for souls, religion in Latin America will remain the keystone of people's lives.
negros contra o racismo e toda a segregação. Viva Jesus!
Brasileiros são místicos por cultura.
Brazilians are mystical by culture. It isn't a coincidental or momentary thing, but a question of the cultural foundation of Brazilians and Latin Americans.
Cultural brasileiro e latino-americano.
That's why, to Brazilians, what's important isn't being Catholic, Protestant, or Spiritist, but God, religion. All that is religion and all that is God is good.
Next time on Americas, the artists of Latin America, voices struggling to be heard, building images of and for their people. That's next time on Americas.
Pode até me amassar, mas me solte quando ele
Visit the world's largest tropical island and discover its rich variety of plants, animals, and climates. It's New Guinea, land of the unexpected. Tomorrow evening at 8 here on Public TV from Spokane. Now stay with us for Survivors coming up next.